They say the bridge didn't vanish this time. It stayed. Not for a night or a season or until the fog changed its mind. It simply remained. A part of the hill, a part of the land. And no one crossed it. Not because they feared it, but because they no longer needed to. The silence that had once hummed beneath the village had gone still. The trees that used to whisper now only rustled in the wind, and the names that had bloomed in green stone had sunk back into the earth. The other side had closed its mouth, and in doing so offered something no one expected: peace. Brina stood beside Ellric near the foot of the bridge, watching the breeze shift through the rails. They hadn't crossed since their return from the grove, since the spiral chamber had gone still, since the final name had surfaced in the pool and left no echo. It felt like the world had finished a sentence. She turned to Ellric and asked quietly, "Do you remember when you came back that first time? You were bleeding, but not from any wound." Ellric nodded slowly. His voice was steady. "The bridge took something from me then. Not blood, not pain. It took memory. A part of me that didn't want to go. That's what made me bleed." Brina looked out at the water, still and soft beneath the bridge. "But you got it back." "Yes," he said, "eventually, when I stopped crossing to take and started crossing to listen." She smiled. "Then let's listen one last time." That day, they crossed together, not to explore, but to return something. They followed the path they knew so well, past the silver-leaf trees, across the stones worn by quiet passage, down into the grove of names. The place where it all began to unfold. The stones no longer glowed, but they sat peacefully in the moss, as if sleeping. The air smelled of rain and memory. The trees had gone silent, and at the grove's far edge the archway still stood, faintly humming. Not a call, not an invitation, just a farewell. Ellric placed his palm on one of the older stones. It pulsed faintly under his hand. He smiled. "It knows," he said. Brina did the same. She pressed her fingers gently to the name that had once shone brightest. And in the stillness, she felt the quiet joy of something letting go. They sat in the grove for a long while, saying nothing at first. The wind carried no message. The earth didn't stir. But within the quiet, they began to speak, not loudly, not urgently, but with a calm sort of reverence. They spoke of the spiral and the pool that showed names no one remembered. They spoke of the green stone left in the baker's satchel, and the time Brina stood alone on the bridge, waiting for a tune she didn't yet know. They spoke of what they'd given, and what had been returned. And when the words ran out, they stood. Hand in hand, they turned to leave. As they reached the grove's edge, a shimmer passed through the clearing, only for a moment. Then something gentle moved through them. A warmth. A weight lifted. Ellric looked at her, startled. Brina touched her own face, wide-eyed. Her hands were smooth, her skin unlined. She turned to him and saw the same. Ellric, just as he was when this all began. The weight of the years was gone. The bridge had given it back. Not a gift, a restoration, a quiet undoing of what had been borrowed. They didn't speak at first, just stared. And then Brina laughed. Not a loud laugh, but the kind that blooms from deep inside. The laugh of someone remembering who they are. Ellric joined her, and together, lighter than they'd felt in years, they walked back toward the bridge. As they crossed it, the fog parted for them, no longer curling at their ankles, no longer whispering around their feet, just air, just path, just home. And when they reached the far side, Nettlescloff welcomed them with smells and sounds they hadn't realized they missed. Chimney smoke and fresh bread, blackberries on the vine, a hammer striking iron at the mill. The next morning, the bridge was still there. It hadn't vanished, it hadn't changed, but something in the way the villagers looked at it had. No longer wary, no longer whispering, just a glance, a nod, a quiet understanding. It was part of Nettlescloff now. Not a doorway, not a danger, just a place that had once mattered. Ellric returned to his home near the mill. He took up mending tools again, fixing carts, repairing shutters, oiling hinges. His shoulders no longer sagged with invisible weight. Brina returned to the bakery. She kneaded dough with quiet joy, laughed easily, and hummed tunes no one else knew. When the children asked about the bridge, she would say only, "It listened to us, and we listened back. That's all it wanted." And when the elders asked where Ellric had gone all those seasons ago, she'd smile and say, "He never left. He just wandered until the silence welcomed him back." Years passed. Brina and Ellric did not grow old, not in the way others did. They moved with lightness, spoke with patience. Some said they were blessed, others said they were marked. But most simply believed what they saw. Two people who had once crossed something great and returned whole. In late autumn, when the trees turned copper and the wind swept leaves into long, winding trails, children would follow Brina to the hill. They'd ask her if the bridge was magic. She'd shake her head. "No," she'd say, "not magic, just waiting for the right kind of person." And then she'd hand them a warm stone, smooth and green. By morning, the stone would be gone. And sometimes, when dusk rolled in low and the windows glowed amber, Brina and Ellric would meet at the hill. Not to cross, just to sit. Because some bridges are not meant to be traveled forever. Some are meant to be seen and remembered and left alone. One morning, long after the story had settled into legend, a child knocked on Brina's door. They held out a stone, faintly warm, faintly green. "I think this was yours," they said. Brina took it, held it for a long time. "It remembers you," the child said. Brina smiled. "And I remember it." She placed it on the windowsill. It never glowed again, but it never cooled either. The Hollowridge Bridge remained, and that, finally, was enough.